So we made a song and we deliberately made it hard for ourselves because we tried to do as many 70s and 80s things in the tracks that we could. And it wasn't a cosplay, a tribute, an homage. It was a let's make decisions the same way they made decisions. Let's follow the processes and create something that primarily is a good piece of music before it's a good piece of engineering or mixing. And obviously when you do something like this, you learn a lot. So this is all a bit abstract, but I'll break it down into 3 things that we learned making this song. So the first thing was set your limits early. So we made this song with primarily performed parts by humans, except for the synth part, which I did there. We used the best collective take that the band performed on the day in the studio, and we didn't use a click track. And this means the challenges that we had were more so musical than they were technological, because the best take had to be spot on in every aspect before we decided that it was going to be the take that made it to streaming. When you don't have a click track, you can't go back over and add another loop. You can't overdub that easily. You can't re-record certain parts where the tempo shifts. You can't really add a new section, as in structurally. You can't add a post-chorus or a pre-chorus. I mean, all of these things you can do, but it just would take forever to cut up the audio and add stuff. It's just, you're stuck with what you get out of the studio this way and that way. And when everybody knows that this is the way that we're recording the music, people kind of approach the recording process a little bit differently than they might if they come and sit in this room and plug their guitar into my interface there and just start playing. The session musicians that I brought in were a little bit more critical of their own playing. And interestingly, the band would even finish performing a take, and rather than me having to sit with the engineer and go, should we make them do another one? They would tell us, we heard each other during that take and we know we can do a better one, let's go again. And what we found was that there were subtle differences in the way that the take came out compared to the original demo that I'd given the band to practice going in. And this is not inherently bad. It's not the same track. Things are different. The drums feel different. The guitar playing is a little bit more skewed a certain way, it's a little bit more swung, everything's a little bit different, and together you almost basically have a different track. Now, like I said, I actually really like this because it means that each of the musicians that came in left a little mark on the track that I didn't include in the demo. And so the final product is this combination of what I wanted the track to be and what each of the band members were able to contribute to it, and it works. You kind of have to have this big detachment from the demo that you come into the recording day with, because you're not going to get that exact same demo back in studio level quality. You'll get studio level quality, but you'll get it with all of the perfections and imperfections of the live performance. And that led to the second biggest lesson, which was how important attention to detail is. So let's say we're recording bass. When we are recording the bass part, we need to think, to emulate this particular reference tone from a track that I really like, we need to sit down, decide what bass, decide what strings, decide what tone calibration, decide what amp, decide whether we use an amp or we go DI, decide how we process the bass. There are so many different decisions at each point that we have to think about, that if you take your mind off those things, you leave the studio and then you listen back to the track and you think, man, I should have paid a little bit more attention to this particular detail of this person's playing. Not because the playing is bad, but because I should have tracked it that way. I should have recorded it that way. You need to be paying attention 100% of the time to what each individual musician is playing. And of course, that's only one instrument. There's bass, there's 2 guitars, drums, vocals, backing vocals, strings, horns, percussion, synth. All of these things have different considerations and, probably 5 or 6 decisions that need to be made before we even hit record to make sure that that sound that we get is the sound that we're trying to reference. And that's a lot of decision making. Thankfully, I had an amazing engineer I was working with, but still, you need to stop and think about all of these things. And if you don't think about them, you pay the price later when you realize, I can't change this recording. We're using the best take here, and this is what it sounds like. And that feeling that you can't go and change the tone or the take after it's been done is the third lesson. You need to know when to stop. You can keep doing takes until everybody's fingers fall off, but you need to, at a certain point, realize that you've gotten as close as you can to what you have in your head, and whatever percentage there is left, you need to go and take it into the mixing room and get it sorted out there. You're dealing with human musician session players. They're going to give you imperfect takes, and that's a good thing. You need to accept that after a certain point, the takes will start decreasing in quality, and you just got to know when to stop and say, let's use that one. And last night, I did exactly that. We stopped with the mix, It's on streaming now, a month later, and you tell me if you can hear those decisions. There definitely are elements of the track that aren't perfect, and that's part of the charm, but you have to step back. You have to know when this is the best possible take that I can get with these amazingly talented people who are going to die of exhaustion if I don't give them a rest. The take that you hear is the best take we did on the day. And there's something really intangibly beautiful about that, because when you're making music there, you have all of the control and time, and you almost get paralyzed with the amount of things you can endlessly change because you're digital. But when you're committed to an analog recording, it's a beautiful thing. So we didn't do this for nostalgia or for imitation. It was about looking at that decision-making process. That's probably the most corporate brained way to articulate how I approached making this music. We were trying to emulate the decisions that were being made, and I think we got pretty close. Yeah, you tell me. Go listen to the track.